And welcome to another episode of Hiroyuki Terada, Diaries of a Master Sushi Chef. Hiro, how are you?
Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right, Hiro, we got a great video today for all of our viewers. Tell us what we're doing today.
Yes, we have you can see the amberjack.
Okay.
Hey smart people, Joe here. What do poke, sushi, and sashimi and all of these dishes have in common? Well, they're delicious and they're made with raw fish. And they could all give you parasites. The ocean is a parasite playground. You know that warning about raw or undercooked fish at the bottom of every menu? It's there for a reason. At least 15,000 different species of wormy parasites use fish as a host. Raw fish dishes like sashimi are, well, raw. They're never cooked, which means any parasites or parasite eggs in the fish can end up in our tummies.
But what do you think about this fish? You have any? You used to work with it before?
Amberjack, yes. When I was in Japan.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna wash again.
Okay.
I clean up already inside.
Okay.
So and then take off the scallop already. So I'm gonna first I cut off this part, come up to head, and then take it off. Then I'm going to make in the fillet.
Okay. Okay, Hiro.
Okay, next one I'm gonna cut into this line.
Okay.
And then after that I'm going to go to the back side.
And by the way, the fish came without the internals. It was already gutted.
Also, making it dry. All the way. Then, next one. You can see the bone here.
It's the same bone, but at the other side. Okay.
Wow, this is a lot of parasite here.
A lot of what?
You can see that?
Oh, let's take a look at that. Can you open that up again, Hiro?
It's gotta grow.
Let's see.
Yeah, this fish must be very, very carefully. There's so many things here.
Those are parasites.
So,
Wow. It's going to be interesting. Open up.
And open up everything. And then
Let's get a close-up view for our viewers out there. These are parasites. Let me show, and it's
only the tail side. Yes.
yeah,
And here's another.
so yeah, it's inside the meat. Hold on, let me show. Oh boy, yeah, that's bad. That's like tapeworm.
Sashimi.
That's horrible. Let's take another piece out here. Let me come on this side. Yeah, this is what happens. Yeah, that's. Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is. Oh yeah, that's
This is-
bad. You know, unfortunately, if you ingest this, then that's what's going to be growing inside of you. And when you go to the bathroom, this is exactly what hangs from your rectum. And as you pull it, it just keeps coming out like a long string. Oh, unbelievable. Oh, I'm disgusted. Oh my goodness. So what happened though? The whole fish is infected. I mean, I'm sure that travels.
Only the parts, you know.
Only that part? in the end, this is where it starts.
How's the parasites going? Oh, you have a lot of parasites in here.
The parasite's gone all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way through. You
so-
see that? Cut again, Hero. Cut another section.
Maybe this much?
Yeah.
Oh, here's a. But seems to. Maybe here. You have a parasite here. Look. Look.
This is gonna be interesting.
Yep. Oh, my bad. Woo! As you guys can see, it's a big boy. These big amberjacks.
Look at this slab of meat we're about to get out of this thing.
This thing is a dinosaur.
Cut his guts. This thing really is a fucking dinosaur. But dude, this top part right here is money.
Is it really?
The loin.
So even though the tail has worms, the rest of the meat is pretty much clean and clear to go.
Oh, we're gonna eat this bad boy. Eat some fresh, smoke them up, make some dip.
Take it if you want.
Nice.
That's a keeper for sure.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
that was quick.
Take a look at that.
That's
Beautiful
halibut right
fish.
there.
Wow.
Nice, dude.
What kind of fish is this?
California halibut. You can tell they're a little bit more round. Pacific halibut are more diamond shaped. White side on the bottom.
Gorgeous.
Dark
Nice.
side on top. Nice, dude. First.
Halibut. He's got the eyes on one side too.
What's that?
He's got the eyes on
only
one
eyes.
side.
Yeah, when they are born, they have eyes on both sides, but as they get older, both eyes go to one side.
Hey, smart people, Joe here. What do poke, sushi, and sashimi, and all of these dishes have in common? Well, they're delicious, and they're made with raw fish. And they could all give you parasites. The ocean is a parasite playground. You know that warning about raw or undercooked fish at the bottom of every menu? It's there for a reason. At least 15,000 different species of wormy parasites use fish as a host. Raw fish dishes, like sashimi, are, well, raw. They're never cooked, which means any parasites or parasite eggs in the fish can end up in our tummies. In case you're wondering, let me make this next part extra clear for you. Parasites are so common in fish, if you've eaten raw fish more than a few times, you've almost definitely eaten a parasite egg. The real question is, did it hatch? Okay, so Anisakis is one of the parasites you could get from eating sashimi. One investigation found that 10% of salmon sushi sampled from Seattle restaurants contain dead Anisakis worms. Now, if that raw fish is treated according to regulations, previously frozen for at least 7 days at minus 20 degrees Celsius, then the parasites and the eggs should all be dead. But that means you did still definitely eat them. If the fish isn't frozen correctly, or if it's eaten super fresh right out of the water, viable worms and eggs can make it into your gut. Like all parasites, these worms live in a carefully evolved life cycle. The eggs are released into the ocean through marine mammal poop, which are then eaten by crustaceans, which are then eaten by fish. When people eat this fish, we interrupt this natural cycle, and those nematode worm larvae can take up residence inside our throat, stomach, or intestinal lining instead. On rare occasions, people report feeling a tingling after eating sushi. That's not the wasabi, people, it's worms. Well, it's probably the wasabi, but it could be worms. Of course, parasites don't have to be worms. They can come in a ton of forms, from microbes to ticks to plants to fungi. Humans have recognized the weirdness of parasites for a long time, from the ancient Greeks and Egyptians to the Chinese. The first written records show up on medical papyruses from ancient Egypt, and we found parasite eggs in actual 3,000-year-old mummies. They're even described in the Bible. The fiery serpents mentioned in the Old Testament are thought to be an early description of a painful condition caused by guinea worms. But back then, doctors didn't understand how people actually got parasites. In the 17th century, folks thought parasites just spontaneously generated in the human body because they never saw the worms go in, they only saw the worms come out, if you know what I'm saying. Of course, now we know parasites don't have to go in as whole worms. You only need to eat their eggs. That's how the life cycle of another ocean parasite goes. You've got to be kidding me. I can't say that name. That thing resides in salt marshes off the California coast. It gets passed around by 3 different hosts. Birds poop out the parasite eggs, and the eggs get eaten by horned snails. Then the parasite castrates the snail and reproduces inside it. Then the parasite swims out of the snail and into the gills of the unsuspecting California killifish. It digs through the gills and into the fish's head, where it weaves a little parasite carpet over the little fish's brain. Killifishes that are infected with parasites jerk around and swim near the surface of the water, which makes birds 30 times more likely to snatch that killifish up for a snack than one that isn't infected with parasites. The parasites are promoting their own survival by getting the fish eaten. Finally, after the fish get munched, the parasites burst out into the bird's guts and the cycle starts all over again. Now that's the circle of life. Okay, so fish are one thing, but parasites are everywhere: land, sea, even air. They make up as many as half of all animal species. Scientists think more than 200 different forms of parasitism have evolved independently from one another. It's difficult to even estimate the number of parasites on Earth because they can come in so many forms. From the beginning of multicellular life on Earth, parasites have been locked in quiet evolutionary arms races with almost everything living in their environment. Hosts and parasites always trying to stay one step ahead of each other. And here's the thing, even if you've never gotten sick from eating worm-infected sushi, parasites have impacted your life. Human DNA is full of battle scars from our species' past run-ins with parasites. One of the most famous and nasty parasites out there is Plasmodium vivax, carried by mosquitoes. It's responsible for millions of cases of malaria a year. Today, a whopping 99% of people living in sub-Saharan Africa have a specific type of a protein receptor on their red blood cells that doesn't allow the parasite to gain entry. They evolved a natural malaria parasite defense. We think this change in the genome only took around 8,000 years to become widespread in that region, meaning it must have been much easier to survive in the environment with that variant of the gene than without it.
What is alive?
Holy crap.
What is alive?
Where is it?
Between the red one and the white one.
This is disgusting.
I don't see it that way.
Oh, it just moved.
Jesus.
It's totally
Scary.
What's your reaction?
Well, that's disgusting.
This is what disgusted Jack Sanchez. A package of fresh salmon at Costco in New Rochelle with a live worm in the fish. He called the manager over.
She said it was pretty normal that the salmon had the worm or parasite.
Searched the internet, an entire page of posts popped up from Costco customers around the country who'd found worms in their salmon.
Bon appetit.
A California chef preparing an appetizer with Costco salmon spotted this squiggly parasite.
It moves. Nice and easy. Wow, it's long, yeah.
Fresh coho salmon. It must be fresh. I mean, if it's got a live worm in there, maybe they'll give me a discount on that one.
The discovery of Japanese tapeworms 2 years ago in the salmon at multiple San Diego Costcos made national news. Does the company have a salmon quality control problem? I asked one of the New Rochelle store managers, is there a problem with the worms in the salmon?
No, there is not, sir.
A spokesman at Costco's Seattle headquarters wouldn't answer any of our questions. There can be worms and other parasites in salmon sold and served everywhere, not just Costco.
Make sure that you cook it to a temperature of at least 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and that kills the parasites.
Professor Don Schaffner from the Rutgers Center for Advanced Food Technology says it's risky to eat salmon sushi, cold smoked salmon, and salmon ceviche if the fish is raw and fresh.
Your body may fight off the infection on its own, or you may need to go to a doctor and get medicine to help with that. And again, I mean, in a really bad infection, you might die. Proper freezing of fish will kill these parasites.
The FDA recommends freezing the fish for 7 days at a temperature of -4 degrees Fahrenheit, about the temperature in a normal refrigerator freezer. Then you can have your salmon and eat it too.
This is Chilean salmon. A lot of customers use this for cooking, but we can still use for sushi and farm raised.
Yes.
And then this one is Scottish salmon. It's very popular in Miami.
Now that the salmon is starting to warm up, you can see this worm becoming more active and moving around, whereas before it was just coiled up.
심장. 찢어 심장. 그냥 계속 찍어요. 역대급 쓰레기 방.
Starting at number 11 on our list is Myxozoa. It's a parasite that is actually rather clever. Rather than outright attacking its host, Myxozoa likes to stay with it until the very end, feeding on the fish's oxygen and nutrients for the whole of its life. There are a few types of Myxozoa. Most work in a similar way, by physically invading the fish's organs, like the liver and the heart, and the skin. Nowadays, some Myxozoa have evolved to become important to some species of salmon by instead attacking the salmon's parasitic worms. Next, at number 10, we have some really nasty parasites. Flukes are a type of worm that like to attach themselves to the gills of fish, since there is always a great deal of oxygen and blood here. Once they have embedded themselves by force into the host, they then literally suck the blood from it, often causing a strange pale appearance in the fish's skin and ulcers. They can even cause damage to the fins by making them raggedy and torn. Flukes are definitely worms that you want to stay away from. If the fish is in captivity and has the correct medicine, they can be cured. But for a wild fish, the prognosis is not so good. Also known as white spot disease, freshwater ick is an extremely common parasite for fish to catch. A nightmare for fish keepers, since this tiny organism will eventually cause death and is extremely expensive and hard to control. When the parasite is first caught, the host will start to experience some symptoms such as swimming upside down, resting on the bottom, and refusing food. Eventually, the fish will be blind, and their skin will develop strange white speckles that look similar to grains of salt. After this whole ordeal, the stress and symptoms will eventually kill the fish, unless it is treated in the early stages. This is certainly a scary parasite, but it only infects fish in fresh water, so sea creatures can be assured that they are safe until they meet our next contender at number 8. Sharks are the bullies of the sea. Their bigger size and sharp teeth, mixed with their temperament and powerful jaws, makes them such fantastic hunters in the aquatic world that they are often never hunted as prey. Until you meet number 8 on our list, Analasma. Analasma is a parasite that is classified as a barnacle whose host is primarily sharks. It attaches itself to a shark and burrows inside of its body, working in pairs. The parasite uses hidden tendrils to acquire nutrients from inside the shark. The analasma will also stop the reproductive organs of the shark from working, essentially making it a slave to the parasite. These will take nutrients and oxygens from the shark indefinitely until the shark meets an untimely death. Coming in at number 7 is the appropriately named anchorworm. After mating in the water, female anchorworms begin their parasitic career by anchoring into the flesh of an unsuspecting fish. Unless the worm is manually removed, this worm is here to stay, as it anchors itself deeper and deeper into the creature, sapping it of nutrients and oxygen. For the fish, this means redness and inflammation on its body, lethargy, breathing difficulties, and eventually this may lead to dropsy, which is a buildup of fluids within the fish that causes its scales to poke out as the pressure increases. This one isn't guaranteed to kill the fish, but you certainly would rather have it than our next contender, coming in at number 6. Let's meet one of our most fatal parasites. Be warned, things get a lot more morbid from here on. Dinoflagellate are a group of parasites known for causing velvet disease within fish. Velvet is extremely serious, and a suffering fish never has a good prognosis. A fish with velvet disease will dart around the tank looking for pain relief by scratching itself against objects. This is an act known as flashing and is a common symptom within parasites. The parasite may enter the fish through its gills and multiply there, eventually covering the fish in a shiny brown or golden dusting, which is actually just the parasite itself. They will refuse their food and eventually die from hypoxia, which to you and I is just choking, since the parasites invade the gills and consume the cells there. Now we're getting scary. At number 5, we have what can only be described as zombie fish. This species of fish tapeworm affects the host's behavior in an extremely strange way. This parasite, interestingly, infects many different species. Firstly, it infects birds and is released through eggs in the droppings of the host. Larvae hatch from these eggs and are eaten by small plankton-like creatures known as copepods. When the parasite has grown enough inside the copepods, it can then infect a species of fish known as the three-spined stickleback. The parasite will then cause behavioral changes in the fish. It will cause the stickleback to go a very white color so it can easily be seen by birds above the ocean. The fish will then be urged to swim near the surface, flapping around so that it gives its location away easily to birds. The brainwashed stickleback will even keep still to allow the bird to capture it, starting the cycle all over again, infecting the bird, the copepods, and then the three-spined stickleback. Just missing out on being in the top 3 is a parasite known as hexamata, which mainly causes the disease head and lateral erosion, or simply hole in the head. As hexamata starts its life inside the fish, it will reside in the intestinal tract and move throughout the host, invading vital organs, including the kidneys. In order to spread its spores, it needs to escape through lesions made in the head of the fish, which is then known as hole in the head. Starting out with small indents in the head, the parasite causes initially mild conditions, including discoloration and those lesions I mentioned earlier. However, when left untreated, these small holes in the head grow larger and deeper, attracting bacteria and fungi to invade the exposed lesions and holes in the fish's head that parasite spores escape from. It is these that cause death in the fish, as the creature will eventually lose its appetite and succumb to the infection. Hitting in at number 3 is a special contender. It's the roundworm, or more commonly known as a nematode. What makes it so special? Well, it's simply because of how diverse they are. They can affect everything from fish to insects to mammals, and that includes humans like you and I. We call these types of organisms zoonotic, as they can thrive in different species, similar to the fish tapeworms, which came in at number 5. There are thousands of different species of roundworms, but they all work in a similar sort of way. They can cause anemia, which is a loss of red blood cells. They can hemorrhage fish and cause them to lose their balance when swimming. They also tend to fray the fish's gills, meaning that the host can't take in the required oxygen to survive, often choking it to death or causing it to become slow and confused. They often hook into important body parts and sap energy and nutrients from them, including the liver and digestional tract. Even though these creatures are zoonotic, they might not always show the same symptoms from host to host. In humans, symptoms are usually less fatal and can cause us to have rashes, diarrhea, stomach pains, and general malaise. That's a feeling of unwellness. They are also known to cause us to lose our appetite and to lose weight. In 2012, a man from Brazil caught a zootonic nematode after eating raw sashimi. 2 weeks later, he was diagnosed with a parasite which caused his back to blister into red lesions. Rhizocephala are very similar to the shark-infesting Analazima. However, these barnacles serve as parasites to crabs. Female crabs have a brood pouch where she keeps her eggs. This is mainly how the Rhizocephala attacks its host. After being infected through a joint, the crab will have the parasite racing through its feeding tubes until they reach the brooding pouch. The Rhizocephala then completely destroys the eggs inside the pouch, destroys the pouch itself, and replaces it with itself. The crab is now infertile and is manipulated by the parasite to believe that it still has an egg pouch, meaning the female crab goes out of her way to protect the parasite. Well, that's lucky for male crabs. Don't be so sure. This parasite also attacks the brain of male crabs, making them produce feminine hormones, causing the crab to believe it has an egg sac itself, and infecting it the same way. Yikes! I wonder what can be worse than a parasite that tricks you into caring for it. Wait till you see what we have next. Taking top place is the tongue-eating louse, a completely destructive and terrifying parasite that has a very particular way of working. After entering the host through its gills, the louse will find the tongue of the fish. While attaching itself, it attempts to sever off all the blood vessels in the tongue. The lack of blood coming to the tongue then causes necrosis. This is the scientific term for dying tissue. The necrosis of the tongue kills all of the tissue, making it fall off. With just a stub left, the louse attaches itself to the base of what was the fish's tongue and replaces itself forever. Once the fish dies, the louse will detach itself from the tongue and then just reattach itself to the outside of the fish, gaining more nutrients there. What makes this worse is that this process takes a while, so many people have found fish with no tongues in their shopping. While the fish has the parasite attached, it can still use it as a real tongue with no real detriment to its health. A spooky parasite. This is the only known one in the animal kingdom to become a fully functioning organ when attached. Now you've had time to think, which one of these parasites can only affect humans? The answer is parasitic protozoans. These guys cause malaria, which is passed through mosquitoes and eventually humans, and are zootonic, which, as we learned earlier, means that they can affect multiple species. At number 10 on our list of scary fish, as its name suggests, this creature lives at
The day starts normally enough. You give your pet some food and water. But later, in your pet's water dish, you find this: a hairworm. It didn't get here on its own. It came out of a little cricket. Don't believe me? Okay. These hairworms are gnarly parasites. They also lives in the river. And inside the string, the eggs grow. The hairworm's journey starts innocently enough in a river as an egg. One of many in this long string. The eggs grow into squiggly larvae, which get eaten by a mayfly larva that also lives in the river. And inside the mayfly is exactly where the hairworm needs to be. The hairworm uses this pointy part to burrow into the mayfly's flesh. Then it curls up and waits. Because really, it's not after a mayfly, it's after a cricket. So it sits tight, while the mayfly larva turns into an adult and heads to dry land. Eating all the cricket's stored up fat for about a month. The day starts normally.
Hi, it's Katrina. From parasites that pop ants' heads off to making animal-computer hybrid robots, here are 10 of the most fascinating cases of mind control in nature. Number 10. Euhaplorchus californiensis. The Euhoplorchus californiensis is a parasite that is primarily found in Southern California, hence the name. These parasites live in the gut of shorebirds. Once the very tiny eggs of these parasites develop, they are released into the waters through the shorebird's feces. These eggs will live and develop into larvae if they are swallowed up by snails. Once the larvae reach a certain stage, they are able to escape the snails, which is when they then find killifish. They continue to live in the brain of the killifish, where the parasites begin to control the fish's activity. Once in the brain, the mind control begins. The parasites make the killifish swim to the surface of the ocean, where they start swimming in circles. This makes it easy for the shorebirds to see the killifish, catch them, and then eat them. Once the shorebirds have eaten an infected killifish, the cycle begins again. Number 9. Acacia trees. Ants and acacia trees have had a relationship for generations. For the longest time, people just assumed this is how it was, and no one really looked into the reasoning for this relationship. That was until some scientists discovered that the relationship is actually more one-sided than what people have previously thought. On the outside, this relationship looks to be a win-win for both the ants and the trees. The acacia trees provide the ants with food and hollow thorns, which can be used as nests for the ants. In return, the ants protect the acacia trees from herbivores. Further research has shown that the ants also keep bacteria away from the leaves of the acacia trees, which helps keep the trees' overall good health. However, continued research from scientists has shown that there is a bit of manipulation from the acacia trees to help keep this relationship strong. It turns out that the food that the ants eat from the acacia trees, as an adult, they are about the size of an ant's head to fall off. The larva then begins to pupate inside the head, and when it's ready, a new ant decapitating fly crawls out of the ant's mouth. The coat of the butterfly. This smell can actually make the ants believe that the caterpillar is one of their own larvae. The caterpillar is usually brought back to the ant colony, where the ants are duped into feeding the caterpillars more than they feed their own, probably because they are larger and the ants think that it is a super healthy larva. The ants are now in an evolutionary race with this butterfly species, as colonies that have been duped have been changing their CDC says that about 40 million people in the United States alone might be infected and not even know it. The proteins which affect the central nervous system have complete control over the grasshopper. It then brainwashes its host into a death dive into a body of water, which is something the grasshopper would never do on its own. From there, the worm can detach itself from the grasshopper and carry on with its adventures, usually looking for a mate. Once the worm is no longer attached to the grasshopper is left to drown and die in the waters. For years, scientists have researched how and why these hairworms are able to brainwash the grasshoppers to basically commit suicide. Through their studies, researchers believe that the worm produces proteins which affect the central nervous system of the grasshopper. Number 5. Toxoplasma gondii. Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite that can actually change your behavior and how you act, especially towards your cat. It is more commonly called toxoplasmosis, which is the name of the infection Toxoplasma gondii creates. Turns out that domestic cats are the only known definitive hosts where the parasite can reproduce, and the CDC says that about 40 million people in the United States alone might be infected and not even know it. The parasite is found all over the world, but if you are a healthy adult, there are almost no observable symptoms, but you might really be attracted to cats. Studies have shown that rats and mice infected with toxoplasmosis changed their behavior and were no longer afraid of cats, making it easier for them to get eaten, and then the parasite could infect the cat and keep on spreading. Once the cat is infected, their behavior starts to change, and may often show more symptoms of the infection than any other warm-blooded animal or human. For instance, they can become depressed, which affects their mood and behavior. On top of this, other symptoms of toxoplasmosis are loss of appetite, vomiting, seizures, shortness of breath, muscle weakness, and they might even become partially or completely paralyzed. More recently, toxoplasmosis has been linked to severe neurological disorders such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Also, people with the infection are no longer grossed out by the smell of cat urine. You can catch toxoplasmosis by cleaning out a litter box of an infected cat, eating contaminated meat or shellfish, accidentally ingesting contaminated soil, like if you don't wash your hands after gardening or you eat unwashed vegetables, and from mother to child, which can cause severe birth defects. Like I said before, for healthy adults, you could go your whole life and never show any symptoms, but for people with weak immune systems and infants, it can cause some serious problems. Number 4. The spiny-headed worm. Like the Euhoplorchus californiensis, the acanthocephalans is a gut-dwelling parasite. More simply known as the thorny-headed or spiny-headed worm, the adult worm dwells in the guts of a common bird known as the starling. This worm can vary in length as it can be several millimeters and grow up to 10 centimeters. The spiny-headed worm starts taking over its body and eating the people. It becomes a living syringe and then stirs the eggs around with its claws so the eggs can find their own host. These body snatchers affect beyond their hosts and are affecting the rest of the environment. Through this research, we have learned that they can greatly boost their chances of survival compared to other wasps. But geez, these guys are hardcore. Number 1. The cyborg beetle. Scientists from 2 different universities have used biology to create robots that can match the agility and efficiency of animals. The cyborg beetle is a little biobot that can be used for search and rescue missions and as a spying tool. Researchers from the University of California, Berkeley and Nanyang Technical University in Singapore attached a backpack to a giant flower beetle. This beetle is native to Africa and is about 2 inches long. They are controlled through electrical stimulation, which tells the beetle's muscles when to move. First, there are electrodes inserted at certain parts of the beetle's legs, flight muscles, and optic lobes. These electrodes are connected to the microchip. The idea of cyborg beetles. Beetles are sturdy and can carry a heavy load, including electronic sensors, microphones, thermal sensors, all kinds.